afternoon has kind of an interesting beginning and premise which we're going to talk about. I've entitled it New Covenant Rest. And within the last 6 weeks or so, I've had a couple of people ask me some questions, or have asked members some questions about kind of who we are in terms of our Sabbath, our worship, and all of those things, because, obviously we meet on Saturday, and some people have assumed, based on that alone, that we are Sabbatarians, and that we are Sabbath keepers, that we're required to keep the Sabbath. Well, I think most of us know and understand we're here on Saturday because we have this hall. We've had a history of having this hall. We're not going someplace else. This is a beautiful place that we have. We have this opportunity to worship here. But in all of that, though, because of those, sometimes we have people who come to our congregation with that thought in mind, that we're Sabbatarians, and sometimes they're greatly disappointed, not by the message that they hear, but by the fact that we are not keeping the Sabbath, from sundown to sundown, and that we're not keeping holy days. In the past, and I learned this, and I want to commend Richard because I happened to overhear a conversation that was going on some time back where Richard was trying to be very, very gracious to a person who is a very, let's say, devout Sabbath keeper. And he was being very, very gracious in his explanation. And it basically ended up in a hostile ending. Not on Richard's part, but on the other person's part and the like. And so I had a conversation with Richard after, and Mac. We actually had this conversation. And I'm sharing that with you to tell them, I've done the same things in times past. I've been trying to be gracious. But I think we need to understand that when we're asked the question, as far as Grace Communion International, and that's who we really are. We still go under the flagship of Worldwide Church of God, but we as a fellowship are Grace Communion. That the best response is right up front is no. And then we'll work our way through that. And what is interesting, generally speaking, if a person is open to listening to where we are, they'll continue to pursue it. If not, then basically they won't return, which usually ends up being the situation anyway, even though you try it. So that's where you start. I've been oftentimes said, well, I understand that, you're keeping the Sabbath, and et cetera, et cetera. So today, though, what I'd like, in order to help us to understand something, we're talking about the New Covenant Rest. Now, that may seem a little bit odd, in a sense. In fact, Matt and I were talking about this yesterday because my computer went down, and I was trying to tell Mac a number of things and get some things out and all of those things. But in the course of our conversation, he said, well, that would be a good point to mention. And so we were trying to we were kind of brainstorming and when and how that might give. Well, I'm going to give it today because I processed through some of this, and hopefully it'll help us all to understand. And the context that I want to use today is from Hebrews chapter 8, verse 6 through 13. It may take me a few extra minutes to get through this. We started a little late, so please bear with me. Because if you're a Sabbath keeper, you don't have to worry about it. The sun's not going down till later. And for the rest of us, if you have to leave, okay, that's okay too. But in Hebrews chapter 8, verse 6, here's what the author... Well, let me ask a couple questions first. And these may seem a little bit silly to you, but they're not really silly. So this is kind of a show of hand questions. How many of you believe that the Bible is the Word of God? How many believe that there was an Old Testament? How many believe there is a New Testament? How many believe there was an Old Covenant? And how many believe there is a New Covenant? Yes. Okay. How many of you believe that the New Testament is the inspired Word of God? Okay, we're all there. So that would Hebrews be included in the inspired Word of God and the Bible? Okay, so I'm just trying to lay some ground rules so that we can kind of understand this is the inspired Word of God. We don't exactly know who the author of the book of Hebrews. We refer to the author of Hebrews. A lot of people tend to lean towards the Apostle Paul writing it, but we don't know. But it was included as part of the New Testament Scriptures. And it's addressing Hebrews Israel, as it were, in terms of their historical background and their understanding. So we'll start here kind of breaking in. And it's contrasting and it's saying here now, but, the difference here, but the ministry of Jesus has received is superior to theirs, as the covenant of which he is mediator is superior to the old one, and it is founded on better promises. For if there had been nothing wrong with the first covenant, no place would have been sought for another, but God has found fault with the people and said, "The time is coming, declares the Lord, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. It will not be like the covenant I made with their forefathers." I want to emphasize that. It bears repeating. It will not be like the covenant I made with the forefathers when I took them out of the land, took them by the hand to lead them out of Egypt. So this gives us the time frame of the covenant. "Because they did not remain faithful to my covenant, and I turned away from them, declares the Lord. This is the covenant I will make with the house of Israel. After that time, declares the Lord, I will put my laws into their minds. I'll write them on their hearts. I will be their God. They will be my people. No longer will a man teach his neighbor or a man his brother, saying, know the Lord, because they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest. For I will forgive their wickedness and remember their sins no more." By calling this covenant new, he has made the first one obsolete, and what is obsolete and aging will soon disappear. So, now let's take a look at three things that are mentioned here in terms of the ministry of Jesus. One, it is a more excellent ministry. That's what it tells us in verse 6. 2, it is a better covenant. And 3, it has better promises. Now, with that thought in mind, the other side of the coin is, the other ministry was not a bad ministry. The other covenant was not a bad covenant. And the other promises were not bad promises that they had in the old covenant. Now, though, what we want to do, we use the ministry of Jesus. Let us understand who this pastor is. Let's go back to Hebrews chapter 1. Because in this quote here in the book of Hebrews, it refers back to what we just read, refers back to the book of Ezekiel, where it talks about a new covenant I will make with them, a new heart I will give to them. So it's quoting from the prophets. So we go back to chapter 1, verse 1. In the past, God spoke to our forefathers through the prophets at many times and in various ways. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, and through whom he made the universe. Moses didn't make any universes, by the way. The Son is the radiance of God's glory, the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word. And after he had provided purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty in heaven. So he became as much superior to the angels as the name he has inherited is superior to theirs. So now we find out who we're talking about. Jesus, the Son of God, the creator of the universe, who has purified us, who is set down at the right hand of God in heaven. Now we're going to move from there and take a look and compare. Because what we're moving towards is Old Covenant rest compared and contrasted with New Covenant rest. Are they the same? So now, here's what the author of Hebrews tells us in chapter 3. There's a lot of things in chapter 2. He's the captain of our salvation. He was made like unto us, all these things. But chapter 3, verse 1. Therefore, holy brethren, who share in the heavenly calling, fix your thoughts on Jesus, the apostle and high priest whom we confess.
Feeling the blues today, or tired of life already? Do you have questions about life, or need spiritual advice? We can help. Log on to worldwidechurchofgod.com or wcgfairfield.blogspot.com and stay connected to reality. The Worldwide Church of God in Fairfield, Santa Rosa, and Modesto are located in the San Francisco Bay Area, regarded as the most prosperous region in the United States. We we believe Jesus Christ when he proclaimed in Matthew 6:24 that serving God is more important than serving mammon. We welcome everyone to come and worship and fellowship every Saturday at the times listed on your screen and on our website, worldwidechurchofgod.com.